Welcome back to V2K Photography. This is the Canon R6. Now I should thank my friend Manjunath who sent this camera across from Bangalore for my review. It's really great of you. Thank you so much, Manjunath. Let's look at the specs first. The camera has 20.1 megapixel CMOS sensor. It's got dual pixel autofocus Mark II. It can shoot up to 20 photos a second in silent shooting. It can record 4K video up to 60 FPS. ISO can range up to 102,400 and it's got 8 stops of image stabilization when combined with the RF lenses. First of all, let's look at how well this camera performs in photography aspects. The raw images can pull easily 2.5 stops of information from the shadows and 2.5 stops of information from highlights. This camera is not meant to have a dramatic dynamic range, but having a 5-stop latitude is a really nice thing in my opinion. The R6 can shoot up to 20 photos a second silently, electronically, and also 12 photos per second mechanically. There is virtually no screen blackout, because it shows the previously shot image for a fraction of a second, creating the illusion of blackout-free display. There is this white outline that flickers a little bit. That's what tells you that the camera is taking pictures, so you can easily take pictures unnecessarily when you don't want to. Be very careful with that. But the camera performs fantastic in that aspect. All the Canon cameras I've shot all these years have shown brilliantly in portraiture. The way the skin tones are rendered, there is something about the Canon colors, it's not an exaggeration. Whether they are accurate or otherwise is another debate. The R6 is no different. It packs a punch with real-time stubborn eye autofocus which won't even let go of the eye of the subject. Even with sudden jerks and movements, the eye autofocus is rock solid. With all these technologies, shooting portraits is a breeze. Though the camera is only 20 megapixels, I never felt it inadequate. The RF lenses render the image tack sharp, punchy and clean. Canon has outdone themselves and I can easily say it is on par with the Sony eye autofocus, maybe even better. The same goes with animal eye autofocus. It works fantastic on dogs and cats. A few of my friends have used it on birds, so altogether a definite victory there. The ISO performance is really commendable. The Canon sensors are not well known for their high ISO performance, but the R6 surprisingly looks good up to ISO 6400, after which we start to lose details. That's totally fine with me because ISO 6400 is a high enough number for me for most situations. Another tiny little thing. If you're shooting in both RAW and JPEG, and if you choose to delete a picture, the camera would ask you if you need to delete the RAW image or the non-RAW image or both. That is something I've never seen in any other camera. I agree, it could be annoying sometimes, but you can't be too careful all the time, right? It's a really well thought out functionality. I really like it. The R6 can shoot 4K up to 60 FPS, 30 FPS, 24, 25 on all these frame rates. When you turn it to 60 FPS and 30 FPS, I think there is a slight crop. It's very slight crop, but that's totally fine with me. It's almost full frame 4K 60 FPS and I'm completely fine with it. Absolutely no complaints there. The camera can record 10-bit videos in 4K and Full HD internally, but it is all IPB settings. Is that a problem? To my untrained eyes, I did not see any problem at all, unless you're doing some green screen kind of complex work. All eye settings is something you don't need all the time. The IPB settings is really good. It may pound your computer while rendering, but the clarity is still there. I don't think you are going to miss anything dramatic. Just using the IPB settings, it's more than sufficient for wedding videos, for low budget documentaries. I think the IPB settings is more than sufficient, and please correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. With great resolutions and frame rates come great rolling shutters. But hear me out. If you're panning the camera like crazy, the rolling shutter is definitely exaggerated. But under normal controlled circumstances, the rolling shutter is pretty controlled and very minimal. I think that's the way to use this camera in the first place. The camera can also shoot in HDR mode, high dynamic range content, but honestly I did not get a chance to explore it properly, so I did not test it thoroughly. The camera can also shoot 120 FPS in full HD. The quality is pretty decent really, even in 10-bit. The quality is fantastic. But I have a small gripe to make. It should have been just like any other frame rate selection, right? Just go select 120 FPS and start shooting. It should be that simple. But Canon chose to have it hidden under enable higher frame rate option. I don't know why the extra hop. I don't understand. That's weird, but that's the way it is. The full HD 60 FPS is buttery smooth. So good for B-roll, and you can also shoot that in 10-bit. Wonderful. The dual pixel autofocus Mark II, it is out of the world. Seriously, it is pretty fast when it has to be, and also cinematically slow when you tweak it down. I really love how reliable and consistent the autofocus is. Absolutely brilliant, seriously. The digital stabilization on this camera is a bit jerky. I don't like it particularly. It keeps jumping around and it's a little jarring. But the in-body image stabilization is beautiful. Combined with the RF lenses, we get about 8 stops of stabilization. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? The grip is excellent with room for all fingers and feels nice in hands. The EOS R used to be shaped much edgier, but the R6 is a lot curvy, like the 5D4. For some reason I like the shape of the EOS R better. This is also pretty solid and feels nice in hands. For the first timers, this is not a problem at all. If you are a 5D3 or 5D4 user, this grip is almost identical to it. If you are a Canon shooter already, the buttons will feel familiar to you. There is no lock on the mode dial. It is securely placed in the middle. So I don't think accidental changes are common. And also you don't get a top LCD to quickly check the current status of the camera. I wish the navigation wheel had buttons on top, bottom, left and right. It could have been much easier with just a thumb action than multiple finger combination actions. We also have the M function button that you can customize with frequently accessed functionality. The button feels good to press, and also the placement is ergonomically brilliant. The RP uses the LPEN6 battery, which belongs to the same old LPE6 family, so you can use all the batteries that you already have. From the moment I received the camera until this moment of video making, I haven't recharged the battery yet. There is still 1 bar left on the battery, so the battery life is amazing, I should say. The R6 has dual SD card slots and both are UHS 2 compatible. The fully functional touchscreen is awesome to use. You can also navigate the menus. You can do anything that you want with the touchscreen. You can just use it like a cell phone. And the flip out screen might also come in handy if you need to film yourself. The joystick is an excellent addition. You can navigate a lot of stuffs in the menu and also can be used to navigate photos. The joystick and the AF on buttons are kept adjacent to each other, making the camera ergonomically stronger for those who prefer to shoot with the back button focus. The R6 has a micro HDMI out. That's baffling. There's a lot of real estate here. Maybe a full HDMI or even a mini HDMI, which is much more secure than a micro HDMI out. That's confusing, but that's the way it is. The camera has a USB-C port, a remote trigger port, a headphone jack and a microphone jack. This is something that I don't like in Canon cameras, having the on-off switch to the left. I think it is best placed here. We don't even have a front ring, right, and a front dial. So I think the on-off switch must have been here than here. I don't know why Canon always does that. There are some entry-level cameras in Canon which have the on-off switch on the top here. But having everything on the same side is, I think, more ergonomical because I'm so used to shooting Nikon cameras and Sony cameras. So having the switch here is much easier for me than having a switch separately on the left side, because this is a mirrorless camera and it eats up batteries a lot, right? So I keep turning on and turning off the camera frequently to conserve battery. You can customize the RF lens ring to change white balance, ISO, aperture, etc. The R6 features a 3.69 million dot OLED EVF that looks sharp with a 0.76 magnification. The shutter curtain closes when you need to change the lens, prohibiting dust from falling on the sensor. The negative side to this is the dust particles can create more damage to the shutter curtain than the sensor. Cleaning the sensor is fairly easier than shutter curtains, which are quite delicate already. The body is weather sealed, it is not waterproof, it can withstand drizzles and dust. The info button toggles between different sets of information, and what I like the most is you can get a clean mode without any information on the screen. That's beautiful. Sometimes excessive information can be jarring and distracting. I totally welcome this. I think the Canon EOS R6 is one of the most powerful cameras out there in the consumer market. If you're not looking for really high resolution images, I think the R6 can fulfill any kind of photography that you want